On the other side of a storm is the strength that comes from navigating through it. Raise your sail and begin. Just because you're struggling doesn't mean that you're failing. I think sometimes people equate struggling with failure. It's not. It isn't even close. In fact, if you're struggling, it tells me that you're still in the game. We don't see these incredible opportunities first because every opportunity that you and I have is surrounded by a problem. I've never gone to an opportunity that I didn't have to go to the door of problem. So the next time you have an obstacle, a difficulty, an adversity in your life, don't allow the crisis to numb you. Be alive, learn, feel, fail, learn. That's what it's all about if you want to make this difficult time a good time. I just want you to know that there's a hero within you. I know there is. And during this tough time, let the hero out. Let people see the best of you, your highest aspirations. You be the one who's the lifter and the encourager. Hi, John Maxwell here. And I have so enjoyed our time together on noon every Monday, just doing the series on leadership when it matters most. And I've just done my best every week to kind of speak to the issue of COVID-19 and help us all get better and kind of cope with it and kind of see our way through it and maybe help each other. And literally today, I was going to kind of go a little bit lighter and talk about The Last Dance. I just so enjoyed watching the documentary of Michael Jordan. I love sports, and we don't get much sports now. And I was going to pull out of that some lessons I learned from that documentary to kind of apply to your life that maybe would help you. But with the recent situation that's happening and the incredible social unrest and the tragic murder of George Floyd and others that have suffered injustice, I just felt that I didn't want to talk to you about The Last Dance. It's not the right time. It's not appropriate. Some other time, I'll give you those lessons. But I really want to just talk to you about what's happening right now, because what leaders do is they come alongside of people that they love and care for, and they do their best to give leadership, wisdom, guidance. In my case, with my age, sometimes it's kind of leadership, fatherly advice. But I have some thoughts I just want to share with you, and really I'm going off of a lesson I taught to in that Leadership When It Matters Most series on April 24th when I did a lesson called What You Focus On Expands. It's a great principle. What you focus on, it gets bigger. What you ignore gets smaller. And I want to go back to that same title, What You Focus On Expands, and I want to relate it to where we are right now. And please understand that I'm just sharing this from my heart to you. I love you. I care for you. And when I was speaking at COVID-19, all of us were kind of in the same boat. I realized that when I began to speak on an issue such as this, there's a lot of divided people, a lot of people on one side or the other. And so I realized it's very possible, probable, that what I say can be either misinterpreted or a person will view what I say from their perspective and perhaps put me either in their perspective camp or not. But I don't want that to happen. If it's okay, when I talk to people and teach them, a lot of times I just use the expression, my name is John and I'm your friend. And I am your friend. And if it's okay, I just would like to talk to you from my heart. In fact, literally, I decided this morning, a few hours ago, to do this lesson. And if you know me well, you know that I write on a legal pad with a 4-color pen. Literally, this is my lesson. I just started writing down some thoughts I wanted to give to you. These aren't the most brilliant thoughts, but they're probably not even my best thoughts, but they are my thoughts. And I just give them to you to add value to you. Because what I taught on April 24th about what we focus on expands, I talked about the fact that crisis causes distraction. And the moment that a crisis comes, we kind of lose our way. I lose my way. You lose your way. We just kind of sometimes kind of get a little bit disoriented. And so I talked about the fact that we needed to focus on things that would add value to us and add value to others, because what you focus on, it gets bigger. What you are distracted with begins to, if you put it behind you, gets smaller. And so I want to talk to you about some things perhaps that we want to focus on so that we can have traction. My friend Dan Ryland has an expression I love. He just will say when we're talking about focus and priorities, he'll just say to me, he'll say, John, pick a rabbit. And where he gets that expression is the fact that, the thought or the statement that if you chase two rabbits, both of them escape, because you're not really sure which one to go after first, and you kind of move back and forth, and you give both of them a chance to escape. Well, Dan would say, pick a rabbit. And my father, as I grew up, when he had something really important to say to us, he would sit us down and he'd say, now take notes. And so we'd take notes. And then he'd look at us and say, now, those things you wrote down, put it before you. In fact, there are times I would put a note that my father gave me or a statement they gave me, and I'd put it on Scotch tape on a piece of paper and put it on my, the mirror in my bathroom so I could see it off. And my father would say, put it before you. What he was really saying is, John, what you focus on will get bigger and expand. And if you don't put it before you, if you kind of ignore it, it'll kind of go away. It'll get smaller. And so I want to give you some things in a moment to put behind you that are distractions that I think aren't going to help, but some things that we need to focus on that we really want to put before us. But before I do that, just one more thought, and that is, when I graduated from college, I sat down with my dad. By the way, my dad's still alive. He's 98 and a half. And I asked him, I said, Dad, could you give me some advice? Could you help me? And give me some career advice. Could you give me, I was going into the pastorate, can you give me some ministry advice? And the advice he gave me, I often tell people, is the best advice I've ever received. 50 years later, I still live my life according to what my father said to me that day. He said, John, I want to encourage you that everything that you do in your life from this point on, put it through this grid, and that is, I want you to believe in people, value people, and unconditionally love them. Because he said most people don't have people that believe in them, and only belief brings the best out of people. Most people have never felt truly valued, and so therefore they have a tendency maybe to devalue themselves. And thirdly, he said, trust me, very few people have ever been unconditionally loved. He said, if you'll do those three things, he said, you'll really help a lot of people. And when I teach, like I am right now, or when I'm writing a book, or whether I'm in a leadership meeting, I constantly look at the people in the room as I'm looking at you right now, and I'm saying to you that I believe in you. I believe that you have a best inside of you that always wants to come out. Sometimes we let it out, sometimes we don't. Especially under stress, sometimes we don't. But I also want you to know that I value you as a person. Just period, I value you. You say, but John, you don't know me. It's okay. I don't need to know you. I still value you. I'm a person of faith. God created you. God doesn't create junk. And so therefore, I value you because God values you, and he created you, and he has a purpose for your life. And the very fact that he created us shows us how much he values us, and I unconditionally love you. Now, that being our platform, our foundation, our context, let me just share with you what to put behind you so that you kind of ignore it so it gets smaller, and what to put before you so that it even gets stronger and more clear and bigger. Here we go. Because, by the way, we choose. I choose, you choose, we all choose what we put before us. We all choose what we put behind us. So it's a choice, and this is a beautiful thing about this lesson. You and I can choose to focus on the right things, which will make us better, help others, or we can focus on the wrong things, which will diminish us and diminish those that are around us. So let's go. Number one, put behind you, I'm putting behind this behind me, put behind you devaluing people, and put before you, right in front of you so you can focus on it, valuing people. Now, I'm going to share with you 4 thoughts here quickly, but this one is the main thought, and it's the beginning thought, because I tell you this is the foundation of everything I want to teach. And here it is, very simple. In fact, in our coaching company on the John Maxwell team, the first thing I teach them about John Maxwell team DNA is the fact that we are people of value who value people. And because we are people of value and we value people, what do? We add value to people. And so I want you to know that what you need to focus on right now is the fact that you value people. And because I am a faith person, I follow the teachings of Jesus. And if you follow his teachings in the Gospels, the one thing you come to a conclusion with when you read all four of them is the fact that when Jesus was on earth, he truly valued everyone. Everyone. No matter who they were, no matter what they did, he valued everyone. Now, this is essential, and this is so needed right now in the time that we're living in, for us to begin to look at each other and not put us against them or devalue them because they don't look like us or they don't act like us. No. We need to understand that it all begins with valuing people. Nothing more, nothing less. I remember I was several years ago now in Kiev, Ukraine, and I was getting ready to speak to 12,000 people. I was in the green room, and my translator was in the room with me. And he said, "John, I've read your books." And he said, "I just want to prepare you before you go out to speak to this crowd, that I know in your books and in your teaching, you talk about all the time adding value to people. That's what leaders do. In fact, you teach us the first step of a leader is to add value to people. That's why we lead." He said, "I just want you to know you're about to go talk to people that for 70 years were under communism. They haven't been valued. And when you walk out and talk about adding value to people as a leader, they're not going to at all connect with you because the leaders they know haven't added value to them at all." So he said, "I just want you to understand that as you get ready to speak to them." I had about 15 minutes. He left the green room, and I thought, "Oh my, I've got to think this thing through," and I did. And I wanted to make sure that I connected with the people. And I walked out, and I remember looking at them, and I asked them two questions in the beginning. I said, number one is, how many of you are suspicious of leaders? And of the 12,000 people there, I think 11,998 raised their hands. I said, how many of you have ever been hurt by leaders? And again, they all raised their hands. And basically, they were sharing with me visually what my translator was sharing with me in the green room, is they had never known leaders to add value to them. And so that day I said, well, let me talk to you about the first step of leadership. And the first step is very simple. You value people. In fact, you shouldn't lead people if you don't value them. Because what happens is instead of helping them, you'll manipulate advantage of them. You'll use them for your personal advantage. And instead of helping them and serving them, you'll want them to serve you. And that's just a bad leadership picture. You don't ever want to go there. The first step of leadership, good leadership, is that we value people. But it's also the first step of just behavior in society, that we value people. When I look at the situation we're in right now, I can promise you it's because we don't value one another. We truly don't look at ourselves as our brother's keeper. And so therefore we lack respect and we lack honor. We lack appreciation for others. We just live our life the way we want to live our life. And we basically really don't about other people. In fact, every day I do a very simple practice. I'm just going to give it to you. I mean, this could be literally an hour teaching in itself, but every day I intentionally add value to people, and every day I do 5 things. Every day, first of all, I start off my day by saying to myself and to others, I value you. That's my foundation. Because again, if I don't value you, I won't add value to you. That's a fact. So every day I begin my day by saying I value people. Everyone. Everyone. So, because I value people, that's the first thing. The second thing is I look for ways to add value to people. And I think of ways to add value to people. And I do things that add value to people. And then I encourage others to add value to people, just like I'm doing to you right now, as encouraging you in the place that we are right now in our country to begin to again understand these people are God's creation. they deserve respect, they deserve value. And so that's the first thing I want to share with you, that we need to come together and begin to value. The second thing I want us to focus on is I want you to put behind you, in other words, get this behind you, selfish values. Values that maybe help you but don't help others. And instead of selfish values, what's in it for me and what am I going to gain? And if it's not in it for me, then I don't care about the rest of you. And put behind you those selfish values and put before you just good, solid values. And this is essential. I can think back in the early 1990s when in corporate America there began to be a real problem with ethics. You remember the Enron crisis? I was at that time writing for Time Warner, and I can still remember the leader of Time Warner, the CEO, called me up to New York, and we had a long dinner, and he said, "John, somebody needs to write a book on business ethics," and he's because of all the corporations that are just not treating people right. And he said, "I want you to write the book." And I smiled at him. I said, "Well, I don't think I can." He said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Well, because, Larry, there's no such thing as business ethics." He said, "Well, what do you mean? Look at how the businesses are not doing right for the people and how they're misleading them and how they're dishonest." And he starts going through this litany of all the ethical issues in business. And I said, "Larry, stop. There's no such thing as business ethics. There's just ethics. And if you have them, it works in business, but it also works in community, it works in family, it works everywhere. And if you don't have them, they don't work anywhere." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I got it. And he said, "Well, can you do this?" I said, "Well, I'm not sure. Give me a month to think about it." Because then I asked myself, in a world that is very diverse, with different cultures and thinking and rationale and religions, etc. I said, can I find common ground for everybody to kind of stand on and buy into? And after giving it about a month with some of my research and writing team, I came up and I said, "Yeah, I can write that book, but I'm going to write it on the golden rule. Just very simply, treat others as you would like to be treated yourself." By the way, the golden rule is in every culture and it's in every religion. And so that was our foundation. I said, let's start with the golden rule. So I wrote the book. And it found it to be a great help for people today. In fact, it's still in print. It's called Ethics 101. But the point being is very simple. I wrote that book, and after writing it and seeing how it helped people just understand, if you just do the golden rule, if we just live by that, then things get better and our values get better, and we begin to value each other because we treat others as we would like to be treated. I began to be just consumed with the idea that if you could teach values to people, and if people could learn good values and live good values, they would become more valuable to themselves, but they would become more valuable to the people around them. And it's out of that, because I live in a leadership world, that we not only trained 5 million leaders in every country of the world, but it was out of that we began to go into countries, invited by the presidents, prime ministers of the countries, to have what we call transformation tables where you sit around and you discuss good values and you learn them from each other and you flesh them out with each other and you encourage one another. And what really, really works. The moment I put good values in front of myself and I say, I'm going to learn them, I'm going to live them, all of a sudden, what I focus on expands. I become a person of value in a greater degree, and I begin to add value to so many more people. And that's absolutely huge. In fact, John Varican just texted me this morning, and in Latin America, where we've been working with 3 different countries, he said, "John, we have over now 2 million people sitting in small groups, round tables," and he said, that have been learning and living out good values. Well, to be honest with you, I think in America, I think we have lost our way. And I think that we've gotten away from some great values, such as the Golden Rule, which allowed us as a people and as a country to be great. I was just reading recently, I've just always admired so much Dr. Martin Luther King. And he was such a terrific leader, and just talk about transformation. It was amazing the good that he did. Okay. And I'm just reading one quote that I put in my notes this morning, and it's from Dr. Martin Luther King, and he said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." He said, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality." He said, "We are tied to a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly." And I've thought about him so much, about his incredible values of nonviolence, strong, courageous, peaceful the peaceful process, and just how he stood for right, not only in principle, but in spirit and in attitude. It's a value. And it was a value that was very effective for him, for all of us in America. And I just want to say for all of us that let's just put before ourselves the good values, and put behind us selfish thinking, or does it just benefit me, or I'm only into it or for it if it does. Okay, the third thing I want us to focus on, because what we focus on expands, the third thing I want to share with you today is let's put behind us, put behind you, let me put behind myself, pointing. Pointing at someone else is the problem. Pointing to the other side. Let's put behind us pointing, finding someone else to blame, and instead let's put before us listening. Now, I almost putting before us the word caring, because I love that word. But I wanted to be a little bit more specific, because I think when you care for a person, one of the things you do is you value that person enough to listen, to seek out their perspective, to seek out their opinion. I remember in 1997 when I moved to Atlanta, and there was such a vibrant, beautiful African-American community there. And I so desperately wanted to know them and meet them and hear their experiences. And for 3 years, every 4 months, just 3 times a year, I would have a dinner with different groups from that community. And I would sit there, and it was my treat to have dinner for them. But what I really want to do is just ask them questions and tell me about your journey. It's so helpful. I learned so much. It was at that table of caring, of listening, of respecting, of valuing other people, that they just taught me, and I learned, and I sat at their feet, and I thanked them, and I became a better leader because of them. I had a much better perspective about them. And one of the things I've discovered is this is just a huge discovery, and I think it'll help you. One of my great discoveries is the fact that when you sit down and listen to people and respect people and value people and want to hear their opinion, the closer I get to know people, the more I like those people. And when we build walls of division and partisanship, and it's us against them, and that whole process, that just isn't going to bring us to where we want to go. So let's put behind us the pointing, and it's you and me and your side and my side. Let's put that, and let's put right in front of us. Let's put right in front of us, caring enough to listen to people. I just met a new friend, Tina Singleton, who's been in the Peace Corps for many years and has traveled worldwide, and she's just a beautiful person. And she has a nonprofit organization called Transformation Table. And I called her because I love that word. We're into transformation ourselves and helping people with values, and I wanted to get acquainted with her. And she talked about the fact that as she looked at all the division and partisanship, that she kept asking herself, what can I do? What can I do to make a difference? And because of her vast experience, she's traveled around the world, and she has constantly been in cultures that were divisive. She's constantly been in the middle of two different sides and the pointing and all that stuff. And she said, John, I finally realized that if you could just get people, even from two different sides, to sit down at a table and cook a good meal. And she put a good emphasis on some good food and at the same table at the same time. Amazing, all things, all the differences that began to fade away as we began to find common ground. I love that conversation with her. In fact, because it's her nonprofit that has the transformation table, I just asked her if we could just use it too. We'd always give her the credit for it, obviously, but if we could use it too, because that's what we call our round tables when we teach values, transformation tables. And she was so kind and wonderful, and she agreed, and she's just a truly beautiful person. Now, the point that I'm trying to make and share with you today is this. Instead of letting our differences separate us, can we not sit down and say that we have more in common than we have different? Because we do. You see, when I look at where we are in America right now, to be honest with you, I get kind of discouraged. I think, wow, this is kind of a bad area, bad time for us. This is not a good time. And then I got to reflecting this morning about, is this the worst that it's ever been in America? And I honestly think that when I was growing up as a teenager, if you go back to the 1960s, those were dark times in our country. I mean, just if you'll think about Kennedy and Malcolm X, they were both assassinated. I mean, hatred, assassination, killings. They were both assassinated about 2 years apart. And then you just move up a few more years in the 60s, and you go to Robert Kennedy, and you go to Martin Luther King, and they were assassinated just 2 months apart. I remember where I was when each one of those people were assassinated, and I remember how sad I was, and I was sad for America. I was just sad for the condition we were in. And as I look back at the 1960s, I mean, riots in cities, I mean, the Vietnam War, I mean, protesting. I look back then and I say, wow, it wasn't good back then either. But there was a difference. And I don't want you to miss this difference. I feel that the leadership of our country back then, oh yes, we still had two parties, two different ways of approaching how they should lead the country. But there seemed to be a willingness to cross the aisle, to come together. You see, democracy doesn't work really great divided. It works great when there is a common good. And I felt back then that the people, the leaders of our country, put the people before the party. I don't feel that way now. You see, George Washington didn't want America to have two political parties because he said the moment that happens, they'll be more interested in valuing and in supporting the party than they will to be of leading and adding value to the people. And I'm not trying to be nasty. I'm not trying to be overly negative, but every time I hear somebody that's a politician speak, I ask, and what's sad about it is it's usually their agenda. It's not our agenda. It's not what's best for the people. If we really wanted what was best for the people, we would, again, put behind us our selfish interest, and we would put before us the best for the people. And what's best for the people may not always be best for me, but there's a bigger picture than me. With one trifling exception in the world, the rest of the world is composed of others. I just happen to be one out of several billion. And so I have to have maturity, and maturity is seeing things, having a perspective that you see things from other people's viewpoint. Immaturity is when I see things just from my viewpoint, and so therefore I'm right and you're wrong. And I tell you, it's killing America. It's not helping us at all. It's not building the people and the country that we need to. It's a major way to devalue people, and it's not right. And as a leader, I just tell you, it's not right. And my heart breaks over this. And it breaks because, honestly, we're better than this. One of the things that a crisis does is it usually brings the worst out of people, and we're seeing right now some of us at our very worst. But that's not really who we are. That's not really who we are. We just sometimes let our base feelings, our humanness, our lowest part of ourselves kind of begin to take emotional control of who we are. Which brings me to the last point. Number 4, I would like for us to put behind us our reactions and put before us our reflections. I would like us to minimize reaction, and I would like us to maximize and focus on reflection, because during a crisis, there are 3 zones, and one of the zones is the fear zone. And a fear zone, when we become fearful, and by the way, I want to time out for a moment. I understand why many of you are fearful. I haven't walked in your shoes, so I don't ever pretend to know what you go through. But because I value you, because I unconditionally love you, and because I believe that you have within you a bigger self and a best self, I just want you to know that I honestly can't say I know what you know, because I don't, and I feel what you feel because I don't. But what I know is that that the emotions that we all have, the emotions that I have when I'm under stress, they don't bring out the best of John Maxwell. I say things I shouldn't say. I do things I shouldn't do. I have to look at myself sometimes. I tell people when they ask me what my greatest leadership challenge is, I say I'm my greatest leadership challenge. Leading others is kind of easy, but leading myself, that isn't too easy. If I had to kick the person most responsible for my problems, I probably wouldn't be able to sit down for a week, okay? So a lot of times I got to say, it's me, oh Lord, stand in need of prayer, or the need of correction, or the need of change. No doubt about that. I got that. But in a crisis, when fear grips us, it normally doesn't bring out the best of us. So that's one zone in a crisis, the fear zone, and then another zone that we can be, and we can get out of that faith zone and go into what I call the learning zone, and the learning zone is all about reflection. And here's what I know: I don't like what we're going through, but there are lessons that we all can learn if we would listen to one another, and if we would be open and caring and value one another. There are lessons to be learned. When I have what I call learning lunches, which I've had for 40 years, every month I sit down with somebody bigger, better, faster, smarter than me, take them to lunch, ask them questions to learn from them. And one of the 7 questions I ask them is, what is the most important leadership lesson you've ever learned? And every time I've asked this question, hundreds of times, and regardless of who I'm asking, no matter where I'm asking it, no matter what their background is, when I ask them, what's the most important leadership lesson you've ever learned, they all come to me, and basically they say, they give me the lesson, but here's the context of the lesson, the foundation, the soil where that lesson was birthed and grown out of, was dark days. I've never had a person say, John, the most important leadership lesson I learned was in good times. It was always in dark, bad times. And the reason I want us to put before us reflection right now is if we will reflect, there's a lesson for all of us. There are several lessons for me that I'm learning. We'll get better because of this if we reflect instead of react. And then there's the third zone, which is the improvement zone. And that's where we not only learn, but from our learning we get better. And that should be our response. You know, a couple days ago, when some of the protesting got a little bit out of hand, and Mayor Bottoms did what I thought was a pretty amazing job of talking to her city. I loved how she talked about her love for the city. I thought it was a very strong, good leadership talk. And she made a statement, and she said to the people of Atlanta, she's talking about not the protesting, not the peaceful protesting. She was talking about the rioting, those things. She said, what I see happening on the streets of Atlanta is not Atlanta. And I thought, oh, there's a wise leader. She knows that the reaction is causing the worst out of some people, but she knows that's not really who you are. She knows that we are all better than our worst reactions. I don't know about you, but I've had some things in my life that I've said and done that I'd like to go back and do over again because it wasn't the best of John Maxwell. I know that's what I did, but that wasn't really who I was. I feel that same way about you. I feel that same way about America. I know we're not in our best moment right now, but that's not really who we are. And so as I just kind of close out my little talk with you today, I hope it's been helpful. Again, remember, I give it to you out of the fact that I believe in you, value you, and unconditionally love you. And if I've misspoken anywhere, I'm sorry, but I am human and I misspeak sometimes. But I want you to go beyond just what I've said to you, and I want you to go right to my heart. Because, as I said earlier, we are all better than this. But we will only be better than what we are now if we put before us the 4 things I gave you. If we put before us, and I repeat them quickly now, if we put before us the fact that we value people, if we put before us that we learn and live out good values, if we focus on and put before us that we're going to care and listen, and if we decide to put before us the fact that we're going to learn and reflect from what we're going through. You see, because I believe in you, I think those 4 things are going to become a part of your daily activity for these next few weeks. And because I value you, I know this: good values will bring the best out of you. So I've shared this from my heart to you. I hope it helps. The main thing I want you to know is just very simply, my name is John, and I want you to listen to Mark Cole, the CEO of the Maxwell Enterprises, as he just shares with you a couple things I think you'll be interested in the very near future. Go ahead, Mark.
Wow. Thank you, John. And thank you for listening. Our hope and prayer today in today's pivot is that you heard what John has been saying for 50 years. We are people of value that value people. We value all people. We value you. In fact, we've committed ourselves to our purpose statement, adding value to leaders who multiply value to others. Again, it is leadership when it matters the most, and leadership matters the most right now. We hope we encouraged you. I want to share with you 2 exciting things that we have also pivoted and made available to you. In fact, in this Leadership When It Matters the Most series, next Monday, June the 8th, John Maxwell is going to begin to invite some of his leadership friends, women and men that he respects, that is leading right now when it matters the most. In fact, next week, June the 8th, Simon Sinek, a friend of John's, a fellow writer, a creative, but a leader who is leading during these difficult times when it matters the most, will be joining John and myself, and we will be sharing for 30 minutes on how to lead in times like this. Then we're going to have an open Q&A, a time for you to interact with John Maxwell and Simon Sinek. That will start a series going forward of Leadership When It Matters the Most, John and a leader that he respects coming to you every Monday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Also, for the first time ever, on June the 12th, that is on a Friday at 12 noon, for 3 weeks, John is going to be hosting a book club. John's never hosted a book club. You've never been a part of a book club because John's never done that. But he's recently released a book called Leadership's Greatest Return, a leader's greatest return, and it talks about how to get a return out of your leadership. John's going to be doing this book club June the 12th, 12 o'clock Eastern Time. If you would like to sign up for this free book club, go to johnmaxwell.com/book club, and you'll be able to register and reserve your spot. Again, our prayer is that we've added value to you today. We've added value to you for 50 years of John's platform of adding value to people. Our prayer is that next week, June the 8th, John and Simon Sinek will add value to you. And our prayer is on June the 12th, that through this book club on the leader's greatest return, that we'll be able to add value to you then. Have a great week. Let's lead now when it matters the most.